Good morning. It is Monday, the 9th of March. I'm Maeve McMahon, and this is Europe Today, your daily dose of European news and analysis, live here on Euronews. Coming up, it has been 10 days since US and Israeli strikes hit Iran, killing the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Tehran now finds itself under a fog of thick black smoke and faces a major security and environmental crisis following Israeli strikes on oil refinery facilities. Meanwhile, Iranian drones have been causing destruction across the Middle East and the Gulf, with strikes nearing Dubai International Airport, where thousands of foreign nationals have been stranded. The Arab League has condemned Iran for what it calls a dangerous escalation of attacks against civilian targets and vital infrastructure in the Gulf. Meanwhile, a brand new Supreme Leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, has been announced in Iran as EU leaders prepare to hold emergency talks with Gulf counterparts on the escalating situation in the Middle East. All this as oil prices spike. Euronews correspondents all across the Gulf are keeping us informed across our network. For the latest, we can now cross over to the UAE, where Euronews' regional correspondent, Jane Witherspoon, is standing by for us this morning in Dubai. Good morning, Jane. So Iran has a new supreme leader whilst attacks continue on all fronts. Bring us up to speed.
Good morning. Yes, Mojtaba Khamenei has been elected as the new supreme ruler of Iran, taking over from his father, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who was killed in those strikes 10 days ago, as you say, by the USA and Israel in Iran. Now, there's not much known about the new leader. He's kept a relatively low profile over the years. In fact, there are not many photographs even out there of him. It is expected, though, that the 50 and also Europe will maintain the hardline rule adopted by his father in Iran. Now, that said, President Donald Trump has also issued a bold statement saying that the next Iranian supreme leader is going to have to get approval from us. If he does not get approval from us, he's not going to last long. Now, as you can imagine, the last 48 hours, the attacks have ramped up here across the Middle East. Our colleagues in Doha have reported that they were woken this morning at 3 a.m. by those alarms that go off on our phone, signalling a strike. Here in Dubai on Saturday, there was an attack near to Dubai Airport where a drone hit the tarmac. To a safe space underground in the main terminal. In addition to that, a car was hit by drone debris off one of the main roads near Sheikh Zayed Road, which is the main road through Dubai, resulting in the death of the driver. On Friday night, I attended a closed meeting at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs here in Dubai, where government officials told us that the main priority for the UAE, that they are focused on defending the population and infrastructure while trying to contain the wider situation. Obviously, lots of talk, as you say, about oil prices this morning. A barrel of oil is up to almost $120 a barrel. That is the biggest price hike that we have seen in 4 years. So there'll be lots of eyes keeping a close eye on that.
Indeed, Jane Witherspoon, thank you so much for that live update from Dubai. And as you heard there, oil prices are rising, causing turbulence across the global economy. That's why European and Gulf countries are trying to cope with this sudden war that they never wanted. And that's why they're holding emergency talks today, Monday, with their GCC countries. And our EU news editor, Maria Tadeo, is across the story for us and joins me right now here in the studio. Good morning, Maria. So we're seeing oil prices jumping here to more than $100 a barrel. We haven't seen this for a couple of years. Could this lead to weeks-long supply disruption?
Since 2022, Maeve, of course, we had debated just a week ago when the war started whether or not we would see this $100 a barrel price benchmark and hit on the price mark. And now it's taken 10 days, but we're finally there. Obviously, this has major implications psychologically for the market, but also in terms of the ramifications for the global economy. Ultimately, some analysts say that this could be the worst energy crisis in decades because of the combination around it. On the one hand, you have over the weekend that succession put in place in Iran. It's the son of the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei who will replace him. The signals that sends politically is the hardliners in this regime remain very much in place, and they guide the policy of Iran. Remember also, President Trump had been very clear that he did not consider the son of the late Ayatollah an appropriate choice. He said he was a lightweight and also said it would be unacceptable for the U.S. Obviously, the scenario that the Americans would like to see is something that looks like Venezuela. The top leader gets taken out, and then obviously what is left changes in alignment with the U.S., but that is no longer the case, or it's no longer the case, I should note, for the time being, because we are seeing that retaliation continue from Iran. And then secondly, it is really just a question of logistics, supply, and transportation. When you look at the countries that right now, when it comes to the retaliation from Iran, are the most hurt, it's the Gulf countries. Obviously, we also talk about the Strait of Hormuz is not able to operate normally because of these strikes that keep taking place with missiles, but also drones, which are very cheap to fire, but they create chaos on the ground. So it's really this combination that is propping up energy prices today. I should just point very quickly, President Trump did comment on this over the weekend. He is a president that likes to monitor very much the performance of the stock market. So he likes to see high stock markets and then obviously low energy prices. Right now, this is the reverse. Stocks are plummeting because of the uncertainty, and energy prices are going up. The president of the U.S. seems to be willing to tolerate those levels, saying that this is a small price to pay for global security, especially if the nuclear threat from Iran is eliminated. Just as a final breaking news on this point, because this energy story is important this morning, the G7 will gather, and there's a possibility perhaps that the G7 countries will agree to release some of the strategic oil reserves to sort of step in and stabilize this market.
Indeed, G7 countries meeting, and also EU emergency talks are taking place with GCC counterparts. Fill us in.
Indeed, and that is obviously the Gulf countries speaking. This is a video conference that will take place today with the head of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, and Antonio Costa. This is a sort of two-way communication channel. Remember, these countries are strategic for the energy story for the EU, but also defense, because there is cooperation between a number of European countries and the Gulf countries when it comes to sort of mutual defense. And that's why we've seen the likes of France and Italy, also the UK, saying that they will step in and help protect strategic assets and also their partners in the region. Another point that is perhaps closer to home is the French President Emmanuel Macron, who will be headed to Cyprus. I believe he's probably now on his way there. The flight was scheduled to take place just a few minutes ago. He will go there in a show of solidarity. Remember, last week there was a drone that did hit a base, a UK base in Cyprus, and also the Greek Prime Minister is set to visit. All of this in a show of solidarity, but beyond solidarity, there's a real question about the Mediterranean countries that could be impacted by indiscriminate strikes, and that is something that the Europeans have said they will have to help and step in. And the message also from the Commission was clear last week, saying no stone left unchecked to help these countries that are in this sort of perimeter that could be impacted by the war.
OK, Maria Tadeo, Euronews' EU editor, thank you so much for all those details. And of course, you mentioned the impact this war is having on Mediterranean countries. And actually, very shortly here, we'll be joined by the president of the Eurogroup, who also happens to be the Greek finance minister. So stay tuned for that. But first, here's an update on that pipeline spat between Hungary and Ukraine that now includes a police raid on a Ukrainian convoy and threats over Europe's oil supply. Our Jakub Janis has been taking a closer look.
As the old Hollywood rule goes, attributed to Alfred Hitchcock, a good thriller starts with an explosion, followed by a rising tension. In the crisis between Hungary and Ukraine, the explosion was a literal pipeline. And last week, tension reached a breaking point when the Hungarian anti-terror police raided a Ukrainian state bank convoy carrying cash and gold. And in response, Kiev accused Budapest of taking its citizens hostage. But wait a second, how did we actually get here? Since late January, the Druzhba pipeline has been down. Kiev blames Russia for the explosion and refuses to repair the damage, halting Russian oil to Hungary and Slovakia. Budapest, on the other side, accuses Kiev of exploiting the disruption. And in retaliation, is blocking a critical €90 billion EU loan to Ukraine. But escalation did not stop at financial vetoes. Orban vowed to break the oil blockade by force, though he did not explain how. And Ukraine's president fired back, suggesting he would give Ukrainian troops Orban's phone number. And Hungary condemned the remark as a death threat. But you see, there is also a bigger picture. Both leaders are racing against brutal April deadlines. And if the Ukraine loan is not unblocked by early April, the country will run out of money, facing devastating cuts to public services. Meanwhile, Orban faces divisive elections on the 12th of April, and opposing Ukraine is his strategy to win. That leaves the EU rushing to break the veto and deliver the cash before Ukraine goes broke, while trying not to look like it's picking a side in Hungary. But finding that balance is really hard when this political thriller is building toward its breaking point. So take a deep breath, because the final scene is about to begin.
For more on that story, you can visit euronews.com. But for now, as promised, coming up, we'll be joined by Kyriakos Pyrrhikakis, the president of the Eurogroup and the Minister of Economy and Finance of Greece. As head of the Eurogroup, he chairs meetings of finance ministers from the Eurozone countries and coordinates economic policy across the Eurozone. Good morning.
Good morning.
Great to have you with us here on Europe Today on Euronews.
Delighted to be joining you.
So look, Europeans are waking up today with deep concern about the escalating situation, the rising energy prices. How vulnerable is the European economy here to these shocks?
First of all, we're being tested. This is obvious. And obviously, we're also being quite concerned about how things are unfolding on the ground. I think we're meeting the diplomatic challenge. You mentioned Cyprus before and the visit of President Macron in Cyprus. I think it's quite pertinent that we have this testament, this manifestation of European solidarity by having forces sent in Cyprus. And I have to say I'm quite happy that Greece and the Greek government led the way by being first. I would also add that we're also tested economically. And this is what we're going to be discussing today at the Eurogroup meeting. Energy is going to be a core element of our discussion. The impact of energy prices is significant already, and we want to see how we're going to meet that challenge on the ground as well.
And just first back to that visit in Cyprus today, the Greek Prime Minister also accompanying President Emmanuel Macron. Is the war getting closer to your home?
By definition, I would say that we are concerned, and this is an area where European solidarity is absolutely essential to manifest and showcase. That's why I mentioned and I underlined that it's quite important that European states, European member states are collectively showing support to ensure the security of a member state of the European Union.
And Greeks are concerned. They're already getting very concerned about the cost of living crisis, how this is impacting their pocket. What will you do to address these concerns?
I would say that we already have a toolkit, and the toolkit is the 2022 toolkit. We're not yet there, but businesses and households are already signaling that they want to see what type of support they would receive should the crisis deepen. I think we have two key words here. The first one is duration, how long it will last. The second one is disruption. What type of crisis will it be? If you have a disruption of supply chains and maritime transport, for instance, at the Strait of Hormuz for a very prolonged period of time, by definition, the impact is going to be different. We're looking at the price of natural gas. We're looking at the price of oil. But effectively, there are many elements of a potential disruption that we're also looking at. The price of fertilizers, air traffic, food security. There are many elements on the ground that affect the international economy. And I mentioned 2022 because the invasion of Russia and Ukraine provided us with a European toolkit of how we can manage those crises.
So are we better prepared now?
Of course, we're better prepared. That's why we have this deployment of a toolkit. But at the same time, we need orchestration and coordination at the European level, and this is what the Eurogroup is for. So we're going to be discussing all of those things, both today and on many meetings, even at the level of the leaders, because we need a concerted European action.
Because the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, have warned in a report just the other day that the consequences could be felt earlier than we even think.
The key word here, I think, is uncertainty. That's why I mentioned duration. And uncertainty, we saw that with tariffs. Uncertainty has a much greater impact than a problematic policy per se. That's why you need to unleash the full potential of the European market, of the European Union. When we're discussing macroeconomic developments for the previous year at the level of the European Ministers of Finance, we say that the key word for Europe is resilience. But if we're frank, we need to underline and stress that resilience is not a growth strategy. We need much more. And Europe has a huge potential to unlock its innovation, its dynamism. We need to remove the barriers barriers that exist between the member states of the European Union. And if we're speaking about energy, we need a single European energy market, which we don't have. That's why energy was put on the agenda. It's not only about the here and the now, the crisis that we're having at the Gulf right now. It's much broader. It's about interconnections. It's about regulation. It's about unlocking the potential of our European energy market. We need to do all of those things at once.
A lot to do indeed, of course. But just about the here and now, our viewers waking up this morning worrying about inflation, that it could go up again.
That's why I mentioned before that we're looking very closely the impact on oil and natural gas, and obviously a rise in energy prices has an adverse impact on inflation. We saw that in 2022. I would say that we're not there. 2022 was a much deeper crisis, but we need to be anticipatory and we need to be very well prepared. As you asked before, we're much better prepared now, but we need to be vigilant and we need to be observing the situation on the ground.
And what about the European Central Bank? What role will they be playing here?
Obviously, we believe very firmly in the independence of the European Central Bank, and they have shown that they have the agility and the capability to react when it is necessary, and we fully trust them.
And will that be soon, you think?
I cannot comment on that because, as I mentioned, the independence of the Central Bank is for all Europeans a sine qua non.
And are you feeling very worried right now?
I would say that I feel concerned. I would say that our job is to be concerned. But at the same time, our work is to know what we need to do and when we need to do that. And as I mentioned before, I think that we have this capacity right now, both at the level of Europe, both at the level of Brussels, and at the level of the member states.
And did this war take you by surprise, Minister?
In reality, we have seen a density of geopolitical events in the recent years which shouldn't be taking us by surprise at all. The things we have seen in the last 6 or 7 years would have never been anticipated, from a 2019 lens, which is when the government that I participate at came into office. But I think that at the same time, our capacity building has changed, both at the European level and at the national level. And this is why, even though you cannot fully anticipate the granularity of certain events, the mentality of anti-fragility and of capacity building yourself is now here.
And is the EU speaking with one voice, do you believe, on this war?
I think so. And I mentioned Cyprus at the beginning because that was a testament of European solidarity at the diplomatic level. We need to have more concerted and more coordinated action at the economic level as well. This is our responsibility. This is why we're here.
And President Macron's visit to Cyprus today, is it diplomatic or is it really strategic for him?
I think it's absolutely strategic, and diplomacy is a core element of that strategy. All of those things are being put together. Diplomacy, economic policy. Europe should speak with one voice on all fronts. This is what we need to achieve. We need strategic autonomy.
But Europe has not been speaking with one voice on all fronts.
Well, that's the challenge. That's why we have the Draghi report. That's why we have the Leto report. And this is why the whole idea is that you need a single market to begin with in order to unlock your potential, even on a sovereignty basis, not only on an economic basis. That will be the challenge of my generation in politics, I think. And it's a challenge that should be met. We don't have the luxury of not meeting it.
And you don't have the luxury of time, given the escalation crisis right now.
And what you're saying is effectively an element of the European story in the past. We typically integrated crises, metabolized crises, into a change in policy when they were manifesting themselves. We need to become more anticipatory. We should at least integrate optimal responses to crisis, but at the same time, we need to learn how to anticipate them. We don't have the luxury of simply reacting anymore.
And just one final question. Bulgaria recently joined the Eurozone. How is that going?
It's going well, and we have a collective experience of a transition to the European currency from all the other stories, like the Greek story, for instance, that took place in the past. We're supporting the Bulgarian government, and so far the situation has been going quite well.
Okay. Thank you so much, Minister, for being our guest this morning on Europe Today and for coming into us here on Euronews. All the best with your busy day of talks. And that does bring this edition of Europe Today to an end. For more news and analysis, do visit euronews.com or download our app or visit all our social media sites. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and see you soon on Euronews.
Stay connected to the expanding Iran war with live updates from Euronews correspondents across the Middle East on Euronews and Euronews.com.
Did French border guards mock influencers fleeing Dubai? Year-long sunshine, beaches, and some of the lowest tax and crime rates in the world. That's how the Gulf states market themselves to the West, drawing expats and influencers from Europe and beyond. But the recent US and